Would you be a voice for the voiceless? Even though animals cannot speak, their voices need to be heard. Animal abuse occurs throughout the world behind closed doors. In both domestic and industrial settings, animals go mistreated without anyone knowing. But the people who do know don't speak about it. Do you ever wonder why? What is animal abuse?
Mistreat any animal.
Anytime a dog doesn't have access to shelter, water, and food.
I think animal abuse is definitely the intentional neglect of any animal, dogs, cats, any even laboratory animals.
Explain the difference between disciplining and abusing animals.
Well, I mean, discipline is, no, get down, don't do that. Basically getting their attention. I think abuse would be taking it a step farther, hitting them, anything that's going to harm the animal or hurt the animal, anything like that.
The difference between discipline and abuse is sort of the violence that comes along with abuse. When you're violent towards an animal, it's different than actually disciplining them and making them have rules and regulations that people have to follow in the world. Animals should have to follow also. It makes sense that you should keep your dog on a leash so he can't bite someone, or keep your dog on a leash so he can so he knows that he can't necessarily bite other dogs. I think that's definitely the difference between abuse and discipline. Animal abuse is a horrible crime against society.
Well, it's an awful thing. I mean, it's awful. You should never mistreat your animals. I mean, they're a pet. You shouldn't. If you made the decision to get an animal, a pet, then you should take care of it. I mean, it's a big responsibility, and you have to take all these things into consideration. So it's awful, and it's bad. It makes me sad to think about it.
Animal abuse can be a pretty wide range of issues, really. Anything from physical abuse to something as simple as letting a domestic animal go outside.
Animal abuse is neglect of your animal, to leave your animal somewhere, or not to feed your animal, or to just not to pay your animal any attention.
There's a lot of levels of animal abuse. Basically, you want to treat animals like you treat a person. Make sure they have access to shelter, food and water, a good quality of life. The animal abuse we see is either they're not getting enough nutrition, so dogs that are really emaciated and skinny, and you can just tell they're not getting nearly enough food. You can see all their ribs. That's considered animal abuse. Obviously, any kind of physical abuse, but we really do see it as physical and mental. The most abuse we see with animals is certainly physical, but there can be both mental and physical abuse.
Well, I guess the most familiar type of animal abuse is an intentional cruel act towards an animal, like when you intend to cause them pain or suffering or harm.
I feel like certain people should not adopt. We get calls every day from people for the weirdest reasons why they want to give their animal up.
The animals that are in the wild, we sometimes will abuse them just because we take their space, we take their environments and their habitats away from them, but that's maybe a lesser form of abuse than what we see sometimes in the headlines, like with dogs and dog fighting, intentionally pitting one animal against another to fight to the death. One of the biggest areas of animal abuse sometimes occurs in factory farming.
There's all these regulations for cows and livestock, so any animal that's used for food, like pigs, cattle, chickens, that kind of thing, like the dairy and beef industry, there's all these regulations as how the animals are treated, like what size of, they're actually more regulated than domestic pets are because it's an industry. So they, and you've got USDA, which is the United States, Department of Agriculture, coming in and checking and making sure that everything is up to regulation. So they're actually very much regulated.
And yeah, in industrial animal abuse, that's more of an issue for factory farming and I guess areas where animals who would normally live a life and then be slaughtered for food or for any type of other consumption. Sometimes it's for fur, things like that. Industrial situations, they abuse animals because they get a very efficient process. So instead of then allowing the animals to go out in a pasture and live and walk and have a life that is more inclined for an animal to live, they would keep them in a small crate or caged area, because it's easier than to have the animal given steroids and other treatments to make them grow faster, and then they can profit more from the animal. But the animal, in a lot of situations, like sows in gestation crates, they are not even allowed to stand up. They can't turn around. They have their babies, and they may crush their babies because they can't even get up to move. And that's how they live their life until they're slaughtered.
So just like children, dogs need to be disciplined. And, you know, I was spanked when I was little. And so, you know, little things like that are okay on dogs, you know, trying to teach them a lesson. With discipline, I do more verbal discipline. You know, if they when you're trying to housebreak them, if they poop on the carpet, you know, sometimes I grab their muzzle gently and I'll be like, naughty. And then I reward them when they do good. So I reward them. With animal training and discipline, we really try and reward the good versus penalizing the bad.
Discipline of an animal, I really look at it more as like no different than disciplining your child. You're not going to do anything that you wouldn't do to your child, to your animal. As far as it goes with neglect of an animal, with it really isn't really no difference, because anyway, today's society, you can get in trouble for either or.
Surprisingly, a lot. I think it's become, because of like the changing society, like as human lives get better and we recognize that all humans are afforded freedoms, then we are able to kind of look beyond that and see that, yeah, there's some other non-humans that deserve some rights and qualities of life too. And as far as protecting for abuse, you know, we now have felony dogfighting laws. Many states have them. We also have protections now that will allow domestic partners in a domestic abuse situation to take their animal companions with them to shelters. And also there's some anti-tethering laws on the books. They're getting stronger to make sure that the animals that, you know, we all should care about do have some protection.
If you see an animal outside, you know, try to do your best to help it. You know, if it appears to be hurt or, you know, sick or injured, if it'll let you approach it, you know, you can always pick it up, and, you know, you can take the animal to, you know, an animal control agency, to an animal shelter. You can call 311.
Just by, you know, the more dogfighting we can identify and stop, the better. The more puppy mills we can identify and shut them down, the better. You know, certainly these animals don't have a voice of their own. They can't tell anyone when they're getting abused. So when you get, you know, even if they come in the door and I see them and they may look healthy and I don't know what's happening at home, you know, since they can't have a voice of their own, we have to be their voice. And we have to, you know, speak for them and support them and, you know, do whatever we can to be their voice. So,
being aware, just keeping an eye out. If you have neighbors, if you see their, you know, if they have cats or dogs, if they, you know, if they look like they might be hurt. But then on a, you know, a bigger scale is to maybe push for better legislation. Because, you know, as attorneys, we can only work within the laws we get. We can't push it beyond, you know, what the statutes allow us to do and what the case law allows us to do. But with people in society, they elect the people that they want to represent them and who make these laws, and they can make the laws broader, and they can allow a lot more protection